Mark spent a day talking to 3 men in hospital room 303. The problem? All 3 had died there years ago. It started with a sudden heart attack. Mark collapsed at work and was rushed to the hospital. Doctors immediately began CPR. Machines were beeping rapidly. Nurses were rushing around the room, and then suddenly, Mark's heart stopped. For 6 minutes, there was no pulse, no breathing, nothing. According to the hospital records, Mark was clinically dead. But Mark insists something impossible happened during those 6 minutes. He says the moment his heart stopped, he simply opened his eyes and found himself lying in the same hospital bed, room 303. The lights were on, the machines were still there. Everything looked normal, except for one strange detail. The doctors were gone. Instead, 3 men were inside the room, one standing near the wall, one sitting quietly near the window, and an older man reading a newspaper. The man near the window smiled. First time here? Mark assumed they were other patients. The man introduced himself. Alan. The tall man was Roy. The older man with the newspaper was Joseph. They all seemed strangely calm, almost like they had been there for a long time. Mark asked them where the doctors were. Alan shrugged. "You won't see them." Mark frowned. "Why not?" Roy answered casually. "Different side." Mark didn't understand. Hours seemed to pass. They talked about ordinary things, life, regrets, memories. But every now and then, one of them would say something strange. At one point, Joseph said, "I've been in this room since 1998. Mark laughed. "You've been admitted that long?" Joseph looked confused. "Admitted?" Later, Roy said something that made Mark uneasy. "You're lucky." Mark asked why. Roy replied calmly, "Most people who come here don't get to leave." A chill ran down Mark's spine. "What do you mean, leave?" Roy simply smiled. "You'll understand soon." Eventually, Mark asked the question that had been bothering him. "How long have I been here?" Alan looked at the clock, then said, "Hard to say. Time works differently here." Mark laughed nervously. "Different how?" Alan answered quietly, "Your heart probably hasn't started again yet." By now, Mark felt extremely tired. Joseph folded his newspaper. "You should rest." Mark asked why. Joseph gave a calm answer. "Because if you fall asleep here, you might wake up there." Mark didn't understand, but the exhaustion was overwhelming, so he closed his eyes and fell asleep. The next thing he heard was shouting, machines beeping loudly, doctors yelling. "We got him back!" Mark opened his eyes. Bright hospital lights, doctors standing over him. Room 303, exactly where he had been. But Alan, Roy, and Joseph were gone. Later that night, Mark told a nurse about the 3 men, Alan, Roy, Joseph. The nurse went silent. She checked the hospital records, and what she found made her skin crawl. Alan had died in room 303 in 2015, Roy in 2007, Joseph in 1998. All three of them had died in that room, exactly where Mark had been, exactly where he claimed to have met them. But the detail that haunted him most came later, when he remembered something Alan had said. "You won't see the doctors." At the time, it made no sense, but now, Mark believes he understands why. Because during those 6 minutes, while doctors stood beside him, trying to bring him back, Mark never saw a single one of them. Not once. Which raises a disturbing possibility. Maybe when people die, they don't immediately leave. Maybe they remain in the same place where they died, invisible to the living, but visible to others who died there. Still sitting, still talking, still waiting in places like hospital room 303. And if that's true, then somewhere in that hospital tonight, Alan, Roy, and Joseph might still be there, sitting quietly, talking to the next person whose heart stops for a few minutes.